Hello and welcome to the Rebel Road. I am Simran and I am delighted to have one of my favorite people on the planet with me today. She's a dear friend. She's an incredible sound healer, guide, master, avatar, writer, author now of an amazing book called The 7 Cups of Consciousness. And we're going to have a really deep conversation about how to create real change on the planet. A lot of us think it has to do with what we can do out there. We want to be activists. We want to really put something out into the world. And oftentimes it's the complete opposite that can create the most change. So I'd like to introduce you to ALEYA DAO. She is an amazing individual. You can connect with her at aleyadao.com. She has meditations. Her new book is releasing next week. And she has an amazing sound CD. So in any way that you choose to connect with her, I know that you will be profoundly touched. Welcome, ALEYA. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Simran. It's an honor to connect with you.
Well, it's the perfect timing for this conversation because with everything that is going on in the world, your book is very timely. Your work is incredibly necessary right now for individuals. And so much of that is because we are so outer focused as species. We look to everything outside of us. We are in our cell phones, we're in our computers, we're into the television, we're into the news. We seem to be everywhere but ourselves. And so I want to ask a little bit about how we really go about taking all of that energy that we have now placed outside of ourselves and what we can do with that energy to start coming back home.
We are desperate for connection, which is why we go outside of ourselves. When we walk down the street, right, everybody has their cell phone and they are constantly looking for that connection. And the only place that we actually experience connection, really deep, true connection, is when we go within to what I call that inner river of light, your divine line, and you feel the divine connection flowing within you. As you feel that divine connection inside, you then experience incredible connection with everything externally. And so the good thing is that we are craving and yearning for connection.
Yes.
We just need to do a little redirect. It's almost like taking those satellite dishes that are all angled externally, and we just flip it. So if you think about that yearning that you have for connection, for support, and you just start looking internally for it, you start to find it.
Now, that's sometimes easier said than done because we're so used to reaching out for help from family, from friends, trying to find the right resource and trying to, in a very subtle, subconscious way, say to the other, fix this for me. I don't want to deal with this. And there must be something that someone can do. But it's not someone out there that has to do the fixing or the changing or the growing.
Right. So essentially the only thing that is truly sustainable is when we shift ourselves as opposed to somebody trying to shift us. Somebody can help point us in the right direction, but it's really our own self that's going to make that step forward and make that change. And with all of the work that I do, it actually calls upon the energy self, which I call your higher self. It's another dimensional aspect of you that exists in another dimension. And so when you ask that energetic aspect of you to use your energy fields to redirect all of that yearning, all of those what I call reference points, looking for connection and support externally, and you bring those reference points, you start to use your energy to pull yourself into the inner river, and you look for your connection and your support internally by asking your higher self to do that, it starts to happen. We don't do this with the mind. We only use the mind to make the request. Then we essentially sit on a log, like a bump, and we wait for that energetic aspect of us to redirect us internally, looking for the connection and the support in the inner river.
So, ALEYA, a lot of people that are out there might feel utterly alone. They might feel like despite a planet with 7 billion people, that they are really by themselves. And so when you're talking about asking a higher self or an inner river of light, or as you do with your work, talk about a team that we possess, how does an individual go from that place of I'm completely by myself, there's no one, to really understanding that there is much more around them, especially energetically, than what they can see.
Good point. And that loneliness is pervasive in our culture. And actually, the more we look externally for connection, the lonelier and the emptier we will feel.
Mm.
And so it's really basic. It's so basic that people don't believe it. We close our eyes, meaning we take our awareness off of the physical dimension. We live in a multidimensional reality, and we can't use the physical dimension for everything. It works for a lot of things, but not for that deep inner work and literally feeling very particular qualities within us. So if we want to rid ourselves of that loneliness that sometimes is paralyzing, we first close the eyes and we imagine a river of light deep within us. Pull yourself into the inner river using your inhale, your breath. That is step one. If we can't get into that inner river of light, we can't start shifting and changing our inner world, our higher dimensional reality, and then in turn our physical reality. So from my perspective, if we want to change how we look in the reflection on the mirror, we don't put lipstick on the mirror. It's going to be really frustrating. I don't want to be lonely anymore. I don't want to be broke anymore. I don't want to feel so unsupported. I keep putting lipstick on the mirror. How frustrating. And so if we take our energy and our focus off of the mirror, i.e. physical dimension, and we bring our lovely lipstick of connection and support and love, and we start shifting our inner world, i.e. our divine line, our higher dimensional self, that then starts reflecting onto the surface of the mirror, the physical dimension. So that is the very first step. And again, we don't use the mind to do that. We use our inhale, our breath, our intent to pull ourselves in, and we use our exhale to ground ourselves and get into that place where we are one with everything, with the divine, with love.
I love the analogy of the lipstick. I think that really helps to anchor in, when we're really thinking about something that we want, we can't really paint it onto that mirror. We have to paint it within ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about belief, or we're thinking about unworthiness, and someone is sitting in that space of loneliness where there seems to be no support, then how do they get to the place where they close their eyes and they want to imagine that river of light, but then it's this place of unworthiness that comes in that says, but I couldn't be the one that has a river of light. So talk a little bit about how we each have that, and how to get to the place of even just believing it, even if it's just that mustard seed of belief in terms of moving forward.
Great point. And that actually brings in that concept that you mentioned earlier about the team. So we have a team around us. They are not fragments of our soul. They are their own individual being. It'd be like in some incarnation, you, Simran, going, hey, Leah, I want to be on your team. And then you'd stand next to me in another dimension, not in the physical realm. And then if you were holding a vibration of support and connection with your essence, that would positively, empathically impact me. Each one of us has a team. They are in another dimension. And it is so much easier for them to shift their energy than it is for us, because they don't have the density of the physical dimension. And so you can simply ask your team to encircle you, to activate a vibration of love for the light that flows within them inside themselves, to have them bring their awareness into their inner rivers, so they're moving into a place of connection, to have them activate a vibration of support inside themselves. Now you have this team of beings around you, holding love, connection, and support. Then you might take a breath and go, I can do this. I have a supportive, energetic environment. So it's about just cracking that door, opening that door, or listening to a meditation that literally shifts the energy fields, and then you start feeling it, perceiving it, thinking it. And using the team is actually one of the most powerful techniques to use if you're feeling really, really stuck. Whatever you want, have them hold it inside themselves and positively model it to you.
So you just said something, have them hold it inside themselves. And so even though that we are, and I think in your book you talk about it being the trinity of the higher self, the team, and the self, or the body, even though we are asking for something, even in that respect, this isn't a codependent process, even with the rest of our trinity. It is an interdependent process of each modeling to the
Yeah,
other.
absolutely. So I'm never doing anything to another being. My team isn't doing anything to me, because anytime somebody does something to me or I do something to another, even if it's positive, I'm essentially saying, I think I'm more capable of shifting you than you. That's really disempowering and codependent. And so when the team is holding a vibration of connection, support, love inside themselves, they create this empathic sensation where I am standing right next to them in another dimension, but my energy fields feel their shift. And then my energy fields move into that same higher vibration. When we're exposed to a higher frequency, we normally naturally move to that higher vibration unless we have completely different agenda, right? There's some people that might want to hold a really low, dark, negative attitude, and no matter how much positive energy they're exposed to, well, actually, that's not entirely true. If they are exposed to a high vibration, positive energy for a very long period of time, then eventually their energy fields start moving into that greater coherence. So we're essentially just getting that harmonic vibration to be impacting us in the physical realm from the higher realms.
So when you're talking about multidimensions, because a lot of people have a hard time imagining something that, or knowing something that they can't see. And we're talking about multidimensions of reality and our ability to really shift what's going on this 3D physical plane from planes that we can't see, touch, and in a sense, from the physical sense, feel. So can you talk a little bit about what those look like or feel like, or what's going on, so that the individuals that haven't really been privy to this kind of information can at least get an understanding that we're bigger than the body that we see?
Absolutely. Actually, another dimension is when you close your eyes and you imagine something, or your eyes are open and you think about the future. You just put yourself into another dimension. So we're constantly doing it all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. When we think about the past, we brought our awareness out of the physical dimension, present moment, and we took ourselves into another dimension. When we dream at night, we access a different dimension. When we fantasize, we access a different dimension. So we are constantly accessing other dimensions all the time. The physical dimension is only 1% of the equation. And when we realize that we have a natural ability to do this and we're already doing it, we get to be a little bit more conscious about connecting with these other dimensions, using these other dimensions to create greater coherence, balance, love, light, support, whatever qualities you want. And then that starts reflecting down to you here in this physical realm. So again, you're not using the physical dimension to make any changes. You're using these other realms that you naturally access all the time. Just think about a waterfall. We just accessed another dimension. It's almost like another floor on a building, multiple floors. Now, at a mind level, we can imagine those floors above us. So we've got the 3rd floor, 4th floor, 5th floor. But in truth, these other dimensions encircle us in the same time-space continuum 24/7. So we essentially have 50 floors or 47 floors or 12 floors around us that we have access to if we intend to.
And if that's the case, then that means whatever realm or dimension that we're in, we can actually shift not only this physical dimension, but we can shift things that were what we consider past, but it's just another floor that we're accessing.
Exactly. And then we get impacted by a time spiral continuum. So if I go back in time and I had a traumatic event that happened at the age of 5, so I'm traveling back, just using my imagination, inviting that energetic aspect of me to heal that event at the age of 5, and then reflect that healing to me in every single moment, to the breath of now. Then my whole attitude, approach changes, and the past actually changes as well in some dimensional reality.
So with the multi-dimensions and the way that you work, you often talk about grid systems or making specific changes to blueprints. Can you talk about the soul or the human being and the different layers that we possess in regard to a blueprint or a grid system that actually creates our life, creates our being, and creates how we are viewing and seeing the world in that particular moment?
Absolutely. There are specific aspects of our life, like our finances, our relationships, Our body has its own energetic grids for its health, vitality, ability to manifest. And so if you think of just one aspect of your life that you want to change, then you invite your energy self, that higher self, to connect with that energetic grid. It's almost like your blueprint for your relationships, so your blueprint for your finances, your resources. And then you invite that energetic aspect of you to begin infusing that blueprint that does exist in a higher realm with very specific qualities, vibrations, and consciousness, like a consciousness of empowerment or connection or support or abundance in a way that supports you in actualizing your highest potential. So you're using that higher self to energetically connect with that energetic blueprint, kind of like a blueprint for a house when you're building a house. You infuse it with different frequencies, and those frequencies start to be reflected into the physical plane. Different opportunities begin to appear. So anytime we want to change something in the physical realm, we locate the blueprint, the grid, the template that holds that specific aspect of our life, shift it there, reflect it here. But we also want to hold those vibrations inside ourselves in our divine line. So if in my intimate relationships, I want a deeper level of connection, I would have to hold that vibration of deeper connection internally in my inner river of light. And then I would also ask for that vibration of deeper connection to be infused into my intimate relationship grids.
So I know that I read something of yours, and it was in your current book, The 7 Cups of Consciousness, and you talked about just having come into a relationship and being at the kitchen counter and having this feeling that you wanted to be appreciated by the partner for dinner, for all the things that you did and all of that type of thing. And that's a commonality, I think, in a lot of relationships, or a lot of intimate relationships, especially, is we want the other person to notice. We want the other person to say something, to make a gesture. But with the type of work that you're talking about, this has nothing to do with the other person. And that very thing that we're seeking from outside, somehow we have to give it to ourselves. So what is your way of teaching people to give it to themselves?
We use the outer world to trigger what it is we want. So with that story in the book about standing at the kitchen counter and wanting my partner to appreciate me to a greater degree, I then recognized, I want appreciation. I'm looking for it externally. That's great. That's great information. Now we're going to go to step 2. Step 2 is to bring our awareness internally into that inner river of light divine line. Ask the higher self, that energy self, to activate that vibration of what we're really wanting. So for me, it was appreciation. So I start appreciating myself. I start releasing my partner from being responsible for giving me that need. Not his job. Fire him. As I hold that responsibility for appreciating myself, and then I'm able to begin activate that vibration of appreciation deep in my core. If I'm not responsible for something, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep looking externally. So it's kind of twofold of retrieving the responsibility and then beginning to activate that vibration deep inside. And then as I held that vibration in my divine line at the level of my higher self, we just put lipstick on instead of putting it on the mirror. My partner came over and said, I so appreciate you. And instead of going like, oh my God, really? Thank you so much for valuing me. I was like, oh, that's sweet. Thank you I didn't say this out loud at the time, but thank you for reflecting to me my own internal reality. So that's that healthy co-creative relationship where we are giving ourselves what we really want. And then our partner has the opportunity to reflect it to us.
And that's where we're moving, isn't it, ALEYA? We're moving from a place of codependence to co-creation.
Absolutely.
With ourselves and with everything else in the world.
Yeah, and codependent relationships are becoming intolerable, annoying, irritating. We want to push away from them. And I think the challenge that we're all in right now is figuring out, first of all, I'm in a relationship I can't tolerate. Now what? I don't know what to do. And so this whole concept that I'm presenting is a possibility of a different way of being in a relationship that is sustainable, that is healthy, and then cultivates greater degrees of safety, connection internally, and then we go deeper into our relationships with ourselves, and then have the ability to go deeper in our relationships with others.
You also talk a lot about the team being very much like the imaginary friends that we had as children. And so when we're looking at how we as parents raise children, and rather than discounting the little conversations that they're having with their stuffed animals or their imaginary friends, is that an opportune time, or in what way would you suggest parents starting to really awaken children to their own power of that teen, that higher self, that river of light within?
And that support. So if you do see your child connecting with the teddy bear and having a full-on conversation with a teddy bear, what you can do is you can start teaching your child, well, what's the vibration your teddy bear really wants to hold? Because the team member might actually be in the teddy bear. And the child can then connect with that team member in the teddy bear. Now, I'm not saying that the teddy bear becomes an animate object, being, but the energy is held there. And so if you start teaching the child, well, get the teddy bear to hold self-love. And then the teddy bear is loving itself, showing you how to love yourself. The teddy bear is holding support and safety deep inside itself. And then it's showing you how to hold safety and support deep inside yourself. And so you're essentially teaching your child to create an environment that's incredibly supportive for itself by getting these other energies, the team members, to hold those vibrations inside themselves. And what's the other piece that's really important to remember is that our team are also evolving. They are not ascended master, fully actualized, awakened beings. They are just beings in another dimension, also on a journey of spiritual growth and evolution, wanting to awaken more deeply to their essence. And so the more we can help our team connect deeply with their essence by simply asking for that, they then start to do it. And there was a key piece that you spoke about earlier in our conversation about the physical dimension, and when we make a request in the physical dimension for the energy to shift in a higher dimension, it happens in a huge exponential way. And I think a lot of us are so eager to come to this world because when we're on the other side, we're like, oh, what would happen if the energy here was even more connected? Well, I'm going to go into the physical dimension so that I can make a really powerful, potent request for the energy to shift in the higher realms. But then we get here into the world and we forget. And so when we make that request in the physical dimension, we literally have access to all of this information, a texture, a density that we don't have access to when we're on the other side. So our requests for the energy to shift into greater states of coherence in higher dimensions is incredibly potent. It's sort of like what all of our hearts yearn to do, but we forgot.
And what we've just described for the child is very much the work that we're doing on ourselves and our own inner children.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So when we look at that from the perspective of what's going on out in the world and something really upsets us, whether it is animal rights or whether it is people or whether it is someone that has committed an atrocious crime or a murder, what is the step that an individual can take in their divine line to shift that outer world rather than feeling like everything has to be outwardly focused?
Right. Or I have to move to DC and become an activist and make a ton of money so that I can buy the lobbyists of my choice.
Exactly.
So essentially what we need to do is identify the energy that is most upsetting to us in the outer world by other individuals. So if it's war, that would be hatred, right? There's like a level of intolerance or a lack of respect or a lack of love. And so the very first piece is to identify what behavior another individual or group are exhibiting. Then you think about the solution. What's the opposite? What's the flip it? So if somebody is in a state of hatred and they are warring and attacking people, fighting, the opposite, i.e. solution, is love, self-love. If there is a lack of respect towards the environment and huge pollution happening, the opposite or solution certain level of consciousness, and they then begin to practice what they intend to master. If we are upset by something, it is an indicator that we actually have information and the solution deep inside us. So if you think about people who are being disrespectful towards the planet, the environment, or to other people, we would then bring our awareness back into our divine line, river of light, And we would invite that energetic aspect of us deep in our core to begin activating the solution, self-respect, self-love, whatever it might be. And then we can invite those energetic aspects of us to send information about that self-love or self-respect that we have attained to them at the level of their higher selves, where they have the ability to receive it. We're not doing anything to them. We're just like, hey, you're in a place of self-hatred. Well, I've mastered self-love to a certain degree. Here's a little info. You can take it or not, and then I'm going to model that solution to you. But I'm not going to take my tools of self-love and put it on you, because that disempowers you. And you probably have a few self-love tools that work for you. My self-love tools don't work for you, or my self-respect tools don't work for you. And so then what we're doing is we're creating this strong, positive, empathic field where we are holding the solution. We are not judging, we aren't shaming, we're not disempowering, we're not taking responsibility for stuff that's not ours. We are holding a safe, compassionate space for somebody to be in self-disrespect or self-hatred. If somebody doesn't love themselves, how can they truly love another? If someone doesn't deeply respect themselves, how can they even begin to respect another, much less the planet? And so as we hold that solution deep inside, we are then creating this positive empathic field of transformation. And it only takes one person who is 100% attached, 100% responsible for their own energy and modeling the solution to change 100,000 people.
Yes.
It's not going to take that long if we get this down. And the only way to create a positive empathic field is to be 100% responsible, 100% attached to our own internal reality. No one else's.
That self-responsibility is a huge piece, and probably the self-love is the biggest lesson that each individual on the planet has. Would you say that?
Absolutely. But there's a confusion that we get into. We over-identify with our body. And so if we realize that the only thing we need to love, absolutely 100%, very, very deeply, is the light that flows in our divine line, that's it. Life gets a whole lot easier. You don't have to love your attitude, your personality, your beliefs, your body, your agendas, your accomplishments, your dreams, just your river of light.
But where does the part about the body come in? Because there is a lot, when we look at people's self-love, or we look at how individuals view themselves or berate themselves or treat their own bodies, and you talk about the body being a nature spirit, and how does that part merge? Or is that the body's job to create the self-love for itself?
You got it. It's the body's job. So when I had my enlightenment experience, I had this very clear awareness of the light that flows on the front of my spine. And then I had this awareness of this physical human form I'm in and its own unique consciousness. It actually has its own little personality that's different from me, soul rider ALEYA. And so when I began to really unpack that and look at that more deeply, I realized that my body, Deva, is a nature spirit. It is from this world. When I pass, when I'm no longer needed in this world, or choose to complete my process, my journey, my mission, I will die. I will go back to my light body, and my body will go back to earth. And so when we recognize that the body, Deva, is literally a nature spirit like a horse, and we invite the horse or the body, Deva, human form, to begin taking more responsibility for loving itself, connecting with its own divine line, and the light that flows in its inner river that runs through the spine, the body then starts to cultivate greater degrees of self-love. And that's when the awakening really begins to happen. And we awaken when we hold responsibility for meeting our own needs. If the body is asking the rider to love it, support it, protect it, or if the rider is trying to support and protect the body, Deva, or vice versa, then we feel disempowered and we don't awaken. So the next step is to really start giving responsibility back to the body, Deva, to meet its needs in its own inner river, using its higher self and its energy fields.
So it's actually a codependent relationship when people are feeling responsible for their body and not realizing that it is, in a sense, an entity to itself.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And actually, for 2 years, I did a little experiment with my body, Deva. I would work really hard and my diet would be absolutely perfect all day long. And then at the end of the day, my body, Deva, would say, I want a beer. And I didn't have enough energy and willpower to control the body. And so finally, after 6 months of sort of, I want a beer, I finally gave up and I'm like, you know what? Do whatever you want. It's your body. I'm riding in it. I'm going to model the vibration of relaxation and freedom because that's what the body wanted, from having a beer. Like it wants to relax and feel free and happy. I'm just going to hold those vibrations in my divine line. I'm going to model it to you. And maybe you'll start getting it in a different way instead of beer. It was only 1 or 2 beers. It's not the end of the world. So holding that vibration deep in my divine line, after about 1.5 years, my body of this beer drinking at night, my body, David, said, I don't want a beer anymore. Because she had attained that vibration of freedom, joy, empowerment in her divine line, and I wasn't constantly micromanaging her and then getting her to rebel. So it takes a while. It's a process. When we start seeing behavior in the body, David, we might want to go, Body David, what's going on? Why are you getting kind of kicky on this one? She might say, she or he might say, well, you're taking responsibility for blah, 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 and I want it back. That's what adolescents do. So the more we work with our body in this way, the happier the ride.
So when the deceptive intelligence gets involved and we then just use it as an excuse to act out, talk about the difference between that and actually listening to what the body Deva wants, or what the team wants, or what the self wants. Where does that little piece of deception and manipulation, or how does it show itself?
Well, if we think of a behavior that we are judging as not ideal, right? And what we're really wanting, but maybe there's a little sabotage or deception or disempowerment happening. Instead of judging it as good or bad, we want to ask the question, what am I getting out of it? What is my body getting out of it? What is my team getting out of it? So when we rebel or we sabotage or we deceive, maybe we're actually experiencing a little bit of freedom or empowerment. There is some vibration, some quality that we are after, and we don't care what mechanisms we have to use to get it. As soon as we identify what we're really after in terms of quality or vibration, then we can begin activating that vibration in the divine line of us, the soul rider, the body, the team. And then we stop using that mechanism or that discordant behavior to get that need met in a very, perhaps, entertaining way.
Entertaining, I like that. Now, I know that anyone going through any type of self-help or personal development, they always hear that statement about filling oneself up, about allowing yourself to do what you need to do to get yourself full rather than, or looking at the glass full rather than half empty. And a lot of your work has to do around the cups, and particularly your book now has to do with the 7 cups. And I'd love for you to list out the 7 cups and how that relates to our moment by moment devotion to the self in really creating to the fullest extent in our lives what we desire as co-creative beings.
The 7 concepts, when used together, help you self-actualize, become a fully enlightened being. Now, that might take a few lifetimes, it might take a few years, it depends on where somebody is in their journey. But the very first concept speaks about the idea that we live in a multidimensional world. The physical dimension is just 1% of our reality, and that we have the ability to use these other dimensions while we're in the physical dimension to accelerate our growth and evolution in a very conscious, empowered, and thoughtful and controlled way. The second concept talks about that you are never alone. You have a team, your imaginary friends as children, but now as adults, they can still be an incredible resource, comfort, and buffer, and energetic protection for you. They can also model right energy to you. So whatever it is your soul is wanting, you can have them hold that inside themselves, which then positively, empathically impacts you. The third concept talks about how when we change the vibration flowing in our divine line, we change the energy that we are holding at the level of our higher selves. It then reflects into this outer world. So by changing your inner world, you change your outer world. The fourth concept talks about how we do the opposite of what we are intending on mastering. We can use our challenges to grow if we know what the flip it is or what the solution is. So if I've been in a state of poverty my whole life, physically, financially, emotionally, My soul is hell-bent and determined to attain deep inner support in my core. Sorry for the word H-E-L-L. But there is a level of determination, and the more uncomfortable a situation we have created for ourselves, the more determined we are to attain a very particular solution. So by using that, then the challenges actually turn into our greatest solutions, our greatest strengths. And then the fifth concept talks about the body deva, how it has its own unique consciousness. It is a nature spirit that is from this world. It has the ability to create and manifest in the physical dimension. And so when we give that responsibility to the body deva, amazing things start to happen, and we start enjoying our ride a bit more. And then the sixth concept talks about how your soul, over many, many lifetimes, has acquired very particular vibrations and qualities in your divine line and at the level of your higher self. And when you use your soul's gifts, your wisdom, your mastery on yourself, and you model that in the world, you accelerate your growth and evolution. You create a positive empathic field of transformation for others. You serve in a much bigger way. And you then move into greater degrees of support in every area of your life. And the seventh concept, you're perfect. You have a divine line that flows on the front of your spine. And when you connect with that divine aspect of you, you feel connected, whole, safe, perfect. And you then start moving from that place within your essence to a greater and greater degree. So less distortion on the surface of the mirror. You are truly in your true self.
So that is the 7 cups of consciousness. And you talked a little bit about it can take several lifetimes. It can take several years. And we know it can also happen in an instant. It just depends on each individual's own journey. But we are beings that want it now. We want it now.
Really? I haven't noticed that.
And so when someone does do that work and they place what they're looking to shift inside their divine line, and they're focusing on that, and they're recalibrating, and they've updated all their reference points, and they've done everything, their next question is, okay, has it shown up yet? When is it going to show up? Right. So what's that part of the process? Where is the let go that has to happen so that we then allow all the different aspects and dimensions to do what they are meant to do?
So essentially, attachment. Where are we holding our attachment? And when we hold our attachment in a higher dimension where it's already happening, that attachment then acts as an accelerant and a reflector. If I'm attached to it happening in the physical dimension, it acts like a dead weight. It's going to slow way down. And so if I want a particular outcome, I would see that outcome happening, or rather the feeling of what happens if the outcome occurs in a higher realm. So I'm holding that vibration internally, I'm holding it in a higher realm, I'm seeing it happen in a higher realm, and then it begins to reflect, but holding every ounce of attachment in the dimension where it's already happening is the accelerant. And then it's just a matter of inevitable and timing.
And a lot of people want to actually feel something. They want to feel a shift. And oftentimes with the work that is done, whether it is someone having an energy session or someone doing this type of work or anything, there are going to be people that have a sensation or have a feeling or can feel the shift. And then there are going to be people that don't. Is there any determining factor to why some people feel it and some people don't? Is it their degree of presence within themselves?
That is a beautiful question. And there are so many variables to that. I think the most important piece to keep in mind is that you don't have to physically feel it or even emotionally feel it. I think the awareness is just looking on some higher floor where you are actually experiencing that reality. And then over time, that reality happening in that higher realm will begin to reflect, and your consciousness will just shift. Your thought forms, your reactivity, how you respond to certain situations will just change. You might not even know it. So if you think, okay, well, I'm always in fear. Well, solution of fear is empowerment, trusting in the divine and love and light. I'm just going to ask some energetic aspect of myself to be in that solution of trust and empowerment and inner safety. And then we just hold that awareness, maybe for 30 seconds every day, just a little bit. On some floor, I'm rock solid. And you wait. And then a week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, 3 months later, you go, I don't have fear. I had fear. I was ever in fear. So the indicator will be more the emotions. And then once the emotions change, the thought forms change, then it starts to reflect into the physical plane. So again, it starts to become more an issue of inevitability as opposed to, well, I'm not feeling it yet. Then we get to ask the question, you are having an experience in a physical body. You are in the physical dimension. How do you want to enjoy your journey? How do you want to be here in this world, regardless of the outcome? And so if I'm holding grace inside myself or empowerment inside myself, regardless of what happens externally, whether I'm able to manifest what I want to manifest or not, at least by holding grace or empowerment or divine connection, that is a huge factor as well. So again, when we get less attached to what happens in the outer world and more attached to the vibration that we hold deep inside, that's when it really starts to change.
And I also find too, when we really allow ourselves to be in our body, and I guess in this respect, it means really acknowledging that body, Deva, nature, spirit, and understanding that the work that body, Deva, can do alongside of us in co-creation with us is going to allow us to have that anchoring feeling of something taking place. If nothing else, it'll be a strength of knowing that seems to take place.
Yes, and earlier you mentioned the Sacred Trinity. So a lot of the times people don't feel the shift because they don't get themselves, their body, and their team. It might just be the body, it might just be the rider, or it might just be the team shifting. And so when we ask the soul rider, the body, and the team to all hold the vibration of connection, love, empowerment, support inside the divine line of the soul, the body, the team, that's when we start to really sense the shift, feel it, hear it, consciousness. So really engaging all three of those energies to hold the same vibration, that's when the change happens.
Now, two of my most favorite CDs happen to be ALEYA's CDs. And so definitely, if nothing else, go to her website and get her 2 CDs. You will absolutely love them. And so much of your work has been around sound healing. And when you do some of your meditations that you send out, there's often your beautiful voice is making sound. We are light, sound, and color. And oftentimes it is that vibration of sound that really does help us to lift in a faster way than our thought can and our mind can. Talk a little bit about how sound truly affects us and why it's so important in the work that you do.
Well, when we're making a sound or a particular tone or even a request, it has the ability to impact the other dimensions. And with my toning, I also sing light language, and it's essentially like the language that I use to communicate with the guides, with our energy selves, our higher selves. And that sound has the ability to permeate multiple dimensions, affect a change in a higher dimension, which then reflects here into the physical plane. So it totally bypasses the mind. And it really prevents the mind from having to control and understand. It'd be sort of like trying to get my mouse to control everything that happens on my computer. It's not going to work. That's how we often use our mind. And so when we use the toning, it's essentially activating our hard drive, that higher self, to emit very particular frequencies and vibrations, change those energies in those higher realms into greater states of coherence, which then reflects into the physical plane and positively impacts our consciousness.
And so if someone wants to actually use that type of sound for themselves and they do the same toning that you do alongside with you, or they choose to just tone sounds, I've often heard that the consonants, when we speak, the consonants are just noise. It's actually the vowels that are the real vibration. They are the sounds of the divine. Is that the method that they can then use? And is there any sort of sound technique that they can use alongside with their divine line work or focusing in there that will really help to, number one, anchor the vibrations within them, but also strengthen the power of that divine line?
Beautiful question. And there's 2 pieces to that, actually 3. And that is to recognize that we do make sound in the physical dimension, but our higher selves can also be making a sound in another dimension. So it's almost like multiple sounds or multiple layers. And the very first step is to recognize that whatever you want to change inside yourself or in your outer life, it has a particular sound to it. So if we think about that fear example, so I'm in a state of fear, I want to hold greater degrees of empowerment, I want to trust, I want to have clarity, right? So we're kind of exploring, what do I really want? Oh, I want clarity. Feeling kind of confused. The confusion creates the fear. Well, what's the sound of that confusion? It might not be very pleasant, right? And you don't have to get your mind like, oh, it has this note and then this note. It's just going to be kind of a sense. So we've got this kind of icky, confused sound, not very grounded, not very anchored. And if we make that discordant sound of what we're in, then it starts to change. It starts to change into what our soul is really yearning for, like clarity or empowerment. And so we start making the sound of the discordant energy. Whoa, and so we find, now that was a much quicker process than we would normally take. It would like take 2 minutes or 1 minute of discordant energy until we start hearing another sound that is coherent and really carries the vibration of what our soul is intending. And that toning that I do, there's just some basics. I'm not a toning teacher, but in order to keep the voice healthy and happy, we want to make those tones kind of like you're biting into an apple, yawning, and hooting like an owl all at the same time. Practice this in the shower, in the car, when you're alone, when you're safe, and you can explore your own unique way of toning, but keeping the back of the throat open and then keeping yourself anchored in your belly, kind of breathing from the belly when you make these tones will help you get a more authentic tone of shifting it from the discordant tone into the harmonic tone.
Beautiful. When you look back and you think about 2009 and when you had that experience on the table and all of a sudden you could see grid systems and you could see multi-dimensions, would you have ever considered that your life would have taken such a turn in so many different directions and leading you to a place where you would now be doing the work to the degree that you're doing? And what is probably the greatest awareness from that aspect that you would be able to share with people in terms of just letting go and be in the unknown?
Yeah, it was, it's very overwhelming to have an enlightenment experience and to literally have the awareness of all of those dimensions and then to see my own individual path. And I do have memory of preparing for this incarnation for a very long time before getting here. So that helps. Prep. And now when I reflect upon the enlightenment experience was actually in 2001, so kind of the last 15 years that I have been in this energy. And I would say that I'm doing pretty well. And for one who comes from the other side, like many of us do, we might have almost a expectation that we should be further along than we are. Right? So it's like, oh, I only have my daily cups and only one book. And my niece even said, why do you only have one book? The second one's coming. And the realization that I might have had these goals and these dreams for myself, but that was on the other side. And I have to take into account the density of the physical dimension. And again, to be more attached to the work happening in the higher realms as opposed to what it actually looks like in the physical realm. So am I happy with how it's unfolded? Absolutely. Am I so pleased that my treasure hunt for my love, my beloved, that I actually found him? Absolutely. But at the same time, it was on the path and it's like, well, of course. So there's gratitude, there's humility, there's like, phew, I did it. I made it. Okay, phase 1, now phase 2. And so I think the message really, though, for people is that a lot of the times we don't think we're far enough along, that we should have accomplished more. And we need to take into account the physical dimension, the density. And when we're on the other side, things happen instantaneously. Not in such a dense way, though. And so if we hold our expectations appropriately for ourselves, per the dimension we are in, our journey will be far easier, as opposed to always playing catch up of we're somehow behind. So the analogy is, imagine being on the bottom of the ocean and trying to cook a bundt cake. It's going to be hard, really hard. Imagine being on a luxury yacht on the surface of the water and cook a bundt cake. Easy. And so adjusting those expectations, going, I'm in the physical dimension, look at how much I've accomplished. Wow, how cool, amazing.
Well, and I think that speaks just so much to probably to everyone, because I think everybody in the world, they want to serve, they want to do something significant, they want to make a difference, they want to put something out there that is their legacy. And there's this piece of self-acceptance, and in addition to just lightening up, that kind of needs to happen for this world to kind of lift off some of its vibration of heaviness. Can you speak to some of that self-acceptance, and then the whole piece of playing and lightening up and really understanding that it's not as bad as we want to believe it is?
For anybody that has a desire to make this world a better place and serve, that is an indicator that you are serving already in a higher dimension. So if you put more of the weight on the dimension where you are serving in an absolutely beautiful, huge, limitless way, impacting millions or billions of people, then the pressure of what you're doing in the physical dimension lifts. And so I think it's about recognizing where we are already being of service in the most beautiful and amazing way. Finding the acceptance there, the gratitude and the appreciation of, like, God, I just danced on a beam of light and I spread rainbow swirls around the entire planet, and then I flew around the planet with my unicorn. How magical and cool. And that was fun. And then I infused the vibration of fun and freedom into the higher realms. And self-love. Oh, that was lovely. That was like 20 seconds of work. Okay, now how do I want to use my physical dimensional experience to support the work that I'm doing up there? Then what happens is the physical dimension starts supporting the work we're doing up high. So again, it's just about adjusting our perception and finding it where it already exists. Then we are creating from abundance as opposed to creating from lack. So that self-acceptance, it's already happening, especially if we want it. Just find the dimension where it is.
And it really is just about broadening our vision then. It means being able to see beyond what we can see.
Or just imagine it. Just intend it. And it begins to happen.
Well, it has been a thrill, ALEYA, to be with you. This bold, beautiful, amazing woman who has just released the 7 Cups of Consciousness. So definitely check that out. I think it releases on the 15th of September.
Yes.
And definitely go to her website, aleyadao.com. You'll find information below so that you can access her music, her healing cups, her meditations, and her new book. So thank you so much, ALEYA. On the Rebel Road, it is always an inner journey, never an outer one. It might look like you're going out on the path, but what you're really doing is diving inside. So join me again next week in love, of love, with love, and as love. I am Simran. Be well.